I mean, overblown's a word that has negative connotations, but I don't think it does. This is grand, overblown, big music, and there's almost a sense of triumphalism to it within that tragedy. Hey, everybody, peeps, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, isn't it? My name's John. His name's Andy. I get the same old dreams, same time every night. Fall to the ground and I wake up. So I get out of bed, put on my shoes, and in my head, thoughts fly back to the breakup. More on that later, perhaps not. Because it's Friday, yes, it is. It's our Friday episode where we delve into a track selected by one of our wonderful viewers. This time, the track has been offered up by Steve Chandler, dash XV4YV, whatever. And Steve has offered up stuff before, I believe. And this time he dropped a comment on the episode Tinder Sticks, Show Me Everything, which is the sort of start of the year. And he suggested Jack, Dress You Up in Mourning. I had already listened to this track. So in our infinite wisdom, we decided that Andy would be the one to react to this.
Yes.
So we had a little discussion about it. Yeah, and I can't remember. I don't think you're familiar with any Jacques, are
No,
you?
no, completely flying blind on this one. So I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't even know if I should take. Sometimes you get these suggestions on videos, and you're like, "Oh, they suggested it because the track that we covered today is akin to this suggestion, perhaps in some way, shape, or form." And then we've also discovered that that theory doesn't amount to shit sometimes because the songs don't sound anything alike or have anything in common. So with that in consideration, I really have no idea what I'm getting into here with "Dress You in Mourning."
I will, excuse me. I will say that I can't even remember when. Probably about a year ago. Somebody, it might be less. I really cannot remember. But somebody suggested listening to Jack, and so I did download the album this is from and listen
Okay.
to it. That's why I'm slightly familiar with it.
Gotcha,
But
gotcha. Yeah, I knew that you were familiar with it. I
excuse
didn't know you
me.
had the album. That's good to know. All right. Well, um, I guess you don't want to spoil too much for me, so I will go off and give this thing a first listen, blind listen, and come back and let you and Mr. Chandler and anyone else out there know what I made of it. All right, so we're about 30 seconds into this, give or take, and there is, I mean, dress you in mourning, mourning being the version of the word that means to lament the passing or the absence of someone or something. This clearly has this somber tone. Starts off with a few seconds of this sort of lonely, shuffling drum beat. Might even mimic the way one shuffles along as they're in their thoughts, thinking about something heavy. And then this really pretty, really pretty guitar comes in, but it also has this melancholic sound to it. The way it sort of picks through its notes and then strokes across the chord formation there. Yeah, it's got a sad quality to it, but that doesn't make it any less pretty it does have a lovely sound to it. Let's see where this goes. Strings are gorgeous.
Some things take forever, but this long never. Oh, don't talk about it, it's beyond us, and nothing could end the same thing inside us. So now I
The strings coming back.
street, somewhere it's summer, and someone's birthday. You close your eyes and lay down, my love, beneath him and forget me. And as September is dawn on it, who'll be beside you to dress you in mourning?
There we go.
And then the storm, it woke us up. Yeah, and the world, it seemed so small. And we both knew something forever.
Sounds like the guitar has slightly more effect on it in this portion. Not like a lot, but just enough to add a little bit of difference to this bit as the song has progressed. Yeah, there's still gobs of like somber tone to this. Those strings really are interesting. I like how they stripped them back for the first verse, and then again to add a little spice, they brought them back for what I believe was the second verse before they went into that. Again, what I assume is the chorus. I assume it's the chorus because it has the title of the song in it. That's not a hard rule that that's the way it has to be, but it's just my assumption. But yeah, so far so good. It's really like methodical in the way it's moving along here.
Something now I don't recall.
just the slightest scrape of strings, like an acoustic guitar or something in the background. I thought I caught it before and heard something, but here it's happening again. It's catching my attention. It's so faint, and I think it's just coming in the left can. But an interesting and the lightest of touches.
La da da da.
All right. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. Mm. That sustained note fade. Ah, yeah, that was a really, really pretty song. I this came suggested on a Tindersticks video track that we had done, and while this doesn't sound like the Tindersticks, there are elements there that are akin to it. I could almost see someone watching that episode and perhaps being reminded of this, or they thought of this track. Um, God, those strings are so lush, and the way it sort of all kind of culminated there in that last, over a minute and a half, I would imagine, if at the very least, of music there that kind of carried us to the end. So gorgeous. That definitely was an acoustic guitar in there. I'm almost certain of it. Um, yeah, this is, I don't, I couldn't, I wouldn't deem this for me everyday listening, but there certainly is a time, a place, and a headspace for this song. It's really, really pretty, and thought provocative too. I thought it was really interesting how he's talking about, like, you know, dressing you um in the morning, but also sleep with you in morning, because those are two very, like, you get dressed in the morning at the beginning of the day, uh, and you go to sleep at night, and it sounds like a feeling that, I mean, anyone who's experienced morning knows it knows no limits, or you know times of day. It transcends all of that and can live with you through any kind of point in the day, or it can last with you for years. So I thought that was really interesting, and I wonder if that was like an intentional choice, that sort of dynamic, or the dichotomy of, like, the beginning of the day and the end of the day through these simple acts of getting dressed and going to sleep. That to emphasize that mourning can last, the idea of mourning can last and be experienced anytime. Um, yeah, this is really pretty but somber. But I did enjoy it. It would probably be really good to listen to. Oddly, comforting when you are experiencing these kind of feelings. But perhaps when you're looking for hope as well, because that last bit was enough to make you feel like there could be light at the end of um, whatever tunnel of mourning you're going through and experiencing. Yeah, I've never heard this. I don't. I assume Jack is just the individual. It's an individual artist, not a band. I'm not really sure. John can fill in the blanks for me, having done the research on this track. But yeah, this his voice was great. It was his tone matched the kind of emotional heft that he was conveying in the song. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I did. It's just, again, it's one of those where I'm not always going to be in the headspace to listen to some of this stuff, or something like this, because you know it's got a time and a place, that's for sure. But yeah, I'd be interested to learn more about Jack and this tune by going back and joining John. So let's do just that.
Ted Rogers and Dusty Ben, he's back. So you've had to listen to Jacques Dress You in Mourning. What do you make of it all?
Well, I'll say that I was actually able to, because I know before I went off and listened to this, I had made that comment about sometimes you have no idea if there's a correlation between what you're about to listen to and where it was suggested. Um, but with this, there were some broad correlative qualities between and some of the stuff that I've heard from Tinder Sticks and some of the stuff that I heard on this track, Dress You in Mourning. The orchestration, the strings, sort of the lush quality that they brought to this track is something that I guess I could sort of see happening in some Tinder Stick stuff as well, that I've really enjoyed in the past. Um, so that kind of checked out to me. The first few seconds of this track, though, begin with this sort of lonesome sounding slow drum beat. And that only lasts a few seconds, and then we get some pretty but equally kind of somber guitar that accompanies the shuffling drums for about another, I don't know, 50 seconds before the introduction to those strings that I just alluded to. And the strings add this depth and richness to an already sort of melancholic soundscape that they've crafted. But those strings cut out after about 25 seconds at the 125 mark, and just when the vocals are being introduced for what is either the first half of the verse or the first of two successive verses that appear back to back. I don't really know. Didn't really invest too much thought into it, but I did notice that they reappeared in what would be the second verse or the second half of the first verse, which is an interesting touch and a nice way to kind of strip things back to underscore the back half of that verse from a musical standpoint, to inject those strings back into the mix. So I loved that choice. I thought it was really interesting to kind of pull back, let his voice that you're just hearing for the first time not stand alone, but stand unopposed to the attention grabbing strings that would have otherwise accompanied it. So which made it all that more interesting when they returned, because at that point I was already invested in what he was saying and following him along. So the strings reintroduction didn't pull my attention away. Rather, it just sort of added this almost blossoming type effect to the soundscape of the verse. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And we get treated to the first chorus, and in it he asks, "Who will be beside you to dress you in the morning?" So we have the title dropped, which is always fun to notice, the Easter egg when you can actually hear the lyrics being conveyed. And I have to say the mood of the music is quite fitting for the song title. And I thought it was interesting, Dress You in the Morning, like getting dressed is an act that you typically associate with like one of the first things you do in the morning. I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I got dressed, or woke up, got dressed, brushed my teeth, something like that. But the morning here is the morning where you're lamenting the passing of someone or the absence of someone or something. So that was kind of like an interesting little red flag for me, as I was listening to the words and realizing that Dress You in Mourning, because I already knew the spelling because I had the song title in front of me, was this allusion to that, the latter definition of mourning, not that former definition that I highlighted earlier. So this is all really interesting. I'm kind of just backburnering this and waiting to see what else unfolds from a lyrical standpoint. So as the chorus wraps up, you hear the faintest of this, like that scratching against acoustic guitar strings in the left speaker, or in my case, the left headphone. Um, and that's a sound that you and I are, so it's almost like a dog whistle for us because it's that imperfect sound of chord changing, or that hole in the guitar just catches every little sound and sort of echoes it. And even when you're changing your strings or just moving your fingers, that sound kind of resonates. And I don't know, I love it. I know you do too. So that kind of stuck out to me as this faint thing in my left can. So we get this. The next verse adds a bit of depth and a touch of reverb on the guitar, on the electric guitar. There's also a little bit more oomph to the distortion. I'm not saying they're out here jamming power chords or anything like that, but again, there's this evolution of the verse that we saw in the first half, or the first verse of the first verse, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the first verse was no strings, just guitar and his voice. Then they injected the strings again. Now they're adding this slight touch of oomph to the electric guitar that's featured in this current verse. So I'm really liking these little decisions about adding and building upon what has already been done in the past, so it isn't just a carbon copy or cut and paste of musically the first verse to the next. We then head back into another chorus, but the words are changed a little here. In the first chorus, he asks, "Who will be beside you to dress you in mourning?" And in the second chorus, he asks, "Who will be beside you to sleep with you in the morning?" Which is odd because like you have this idea of going to bed, which happens at night. So I don't know if he's trying to like this full circle, like no matter when you're going through mourning, whether it's when you're getting dressed first thing or when you're laying down to go to bed at night, who will be there, or to suggest perhaps that he will be there for that person, or that someone will be there for you, or that you should find out who that person is because you're going to need them. I don't know what it is, but I just like this sort of little touch of like, you might experience it at this time, you might experience it at this time, and they are polar opposites of one another. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm stretching too much, and I'm doing sort of like interpretive gymnastics on what he means, but I like it. If that's what he's going for, I like that a lot. Also, I could be completely talking out of my ass, which I totally own. So then after the chorus, he just vocalizes some la da das, which is really interesting because that sort of vocalization is almost like I don't know, when you hear it any other way, it's almost like jubilant or carefree, somewhere in between those two feelings. And everything to this point are not jubilant and or carefree. So it's an odd touch to like add that little vocal line before this next bit. And I'm pretty sure that's the last time we hear of him in this. So after that, there's just this beautiful torrent of strings that cascade over the soundscape. They're lush, they're beautiful, and they are sort of at one point supplemented by this tambourine that adds this rhythm to it all. And you can hear the strumming of an acoustic guitar shining through. It's a sound again that you and I both love. And it builds up until it finally hits this wonderful sustained note or chord at the 702 mark. that kind of carries us to silence as it sort of resonates into the ether. This isn't an everyday listener for me, but I can tell you that it's certainly perfectly catered for a certain mood or headspace one might find themselves. Um, and I'm sure that the next time I find myself in this situation, which I don't look forward to, because this is almost like you have to be going through it to hear this and for it to really resonate and carry some heft to it. Um, but I know that unfortunately that's the way life goes, and I'm going to be there, and this will be a nice way to because the first part of it is almost like it validates your feeling. Like it's okay to feel sad. Let this song feel sad with you. It sounds sad. But then this latter half, it's hyperbolic. This latter fifth of the song or fourth of the song, this last bit that's instrumental, has this light at the end of the tunnel kind of effect that is heralded in by that laissez-faire la di da that he does. And it maybe this is my own interpretation, and maybe you're going to be like, no, the last half of the song is the most like dire part, and here's why. But for me, it sounded like it had this like this sort of this inference of possibility that you'll be able to get through this, and there will be an end, perhaps, or a subsiding in your mourning. I don't know. That's sort of just how I interpreted it on one listen, but I'd be interested to hear what you think, and more importantly, what you know about the song, so I can better understand it myself.
Okay. I'll keep that brief then. Not a lot. Um,
Good. That's the opposite of me. I was pretty long-winded there in my discussion.
okay, I'll get into the band and stuff and then into the song. So, Jack was a British alternative rock stroke chamber pop band. They're formed in Cardiff.
You answered one question that I forgot to even ask, which was, is this just a fella named Jack who's a multi-instrumentalist, or is this a band? So here we go. It's a band.
Yeah, so formed in Cardiff, Wales in 1992. They cited that they were heavily influenced by Scott Walker, David Bowie, Roxy Music, and the band themselves and their sound have been compared by other people to Tindersticks,
Oh,
Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and the Divine Comedy.
there we go.
There's not a lot on them, to be fair. The band, I would say, yeah, definitely gained a sort of like cult status in the UK and across Europe, particularly in France, who do love their doomed romances. But sadly had very little commercial success. So this song is from their 1996 debut album, Pioneer Soundtracks. And this is the point where I then point and say, but it's not. That's a Tindersticks album. Because when I was I downloaded the album either months ago, and I listened to it. I downloaded, yeah, but anyway, I'll get into that. And I swear to God, I was doing this, and I think, I better pull the album out to get it in the frame. And I found that I really genuinely thought I'd bought it, and I hadn't. So it's on order. It arrives tomorrow morning.
There you go. We scratched that off the to-do list that you didn't even know it was on.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll say for my part, I really like the album. I think you're, in a certain way, you are correct in terms of headspace. Probably is a slightly different headspace for me. I see this as not all songs, but a lot of them are extensions of Scott Walker songs, I think. Really heavily Scott Walker, and sometimes I'm really in the mood. And there's a big bit of Scott Walker. There's his standard 60s stuff, going for that Baroque period, and then into his experimental period, which is with those industrial noises and everything, and his voice sort of half opera is just the maddest thing you'll listen to, and it's fantastic. So yeah, I think you're great, and I see like a kind of, I mean, overblown is a word that has negative connotations, but I don't think it does. This is grand, overblown, big music, and there's almost a sense of triumphalism to it within that tragedy, and you get that same sort of feeling with someone like Mark Almond. It's a touch of theatrics as well to it, but it's the sort of they can't help but perform,
Mm.
with a broken heart or a busted leg or whatever. They just have the camera's on them and away they go. And it's kind of that feeling with this, and I do like it. I really do, obviously. So yeah, this is from their debut album, Pioneer Soundtracks, which is a really good album and worth checking out. So personnel. Anthony Reynolds, vocals, guitar, keyboards. Matthew Scott, guitar. And they're the core two members that kind of form the band, and then they brought other people in. So
Okay.
Colin Williams, bass, Richard Adderley, rhythm guitar, George Wright, keyboards, and he also, thinking of the video I gave you, didn't have the album cover. The album cover is this pasty-looking bullfighter, Matador. And it's the keyboard player, George Wright, and he does look really pasty. It's an interesting cover. Patrick Pulser, drums, percussion. Audrey Morse, first violin. Laura Williams, second violin. Nadia Lamb, cello, and Hannah Bliss, viola. The album was produced by Peter Walsh, who, coincidentally, produced the last three Scott Walker albums. I'm sure that had nothing to do with it whatsoever. All the songs are written by Reynolds and Scott, and this track was mixed by Reynolds. Most of the other songs were mixed by Peter Walsh as well. And just interesting enough, I don't often include this information, but I'm always a sucker for it. On the run out, etched on side 1, it says Pure 55 A2 for when green eyes were greener. And the run out etched on side B is Pure 55 B1 blue skies bluer. I should include more of them because some of them are really cryptic and interesting. Some of them are nonsense, but I don't know why they put those messages on, but I found that interesting. So despite some really excellent reviews in the music press, neither the album nor the 3 singles from it gained much attention, airplay, anything, and sales were disappointing, pretty poor. But so to give you a snippet of what people said about it, Record Collector. This album was actually re-released about 10 years later as a sort of expanded CD form with some extra bits as well. Record Collector says Anthony Reynolds and Matthew Scott used the studio like an oversized blender and came up with a giant smoothie suffused with a musical daring do. It takes in everything from New York art punk to pastoral Baroque balladry and is topped with lyrics of formidable wit, straining under the weight of highbrow literary references. Pioneer Soundtracks is indie at its most scholarly, a place where talking heads break bread with the fool, where Paddy McClune, prefab sprout, gets the next round in. Play it 24 times and you'll still be finding something new with each listen. It all adds up to an ambitious musical mosaic, brimming with more ideas than most bands can manage in a lifetime. So they're a fan.
Yeah, really.
And I found this website, Penny Black Music, and it just says Pioneer Soundtracks and its 1998 follow-up, The Jazz Age, were to me 2 of the greatest albums to come out of the UK at the end of the 90s. The music they left behind stands up to anything made today. So yeah, some real big fans of the stuff out there. Interestingly, I mentioned Mark Almond. I've read in this, I didn't write it down, but some of their approach was seen as a bit polarizing. And Mark Almond, soft sell, and then his solo career, who wasn't afraid to go big, as they say. He said he hated it, which is really funny because it's sort of like his music. Absolutely. Perhaps he hated it because of that. Someone else was doing his shtick.
Yeah. Rubbed in the wrong way.
Anyway, so the song, we'll get into the lyrics. Some things take forever, but this long never. Don't talk about it, it's beyond us, and nothing could end. The same thing inside us. So now I walk these streets. Somewhere it's summer and someone's birthday. You close your eyes and lay down, my love, beneath him and forget me. And as September is dawning, who'll be beside you to dress you in mourning? And then the storm, it woke us up. Yeah, and the world, it seemed so small. Then we both knew something forever, something now I don't recall. as you say, that string flourish comes in, and then he's back in. And as September is dawning, who'll be beside you to dress you, to sleep with you in mourning? And then, as you say, the instrumental rides out to the end. I think the instrumental is actually longer than you think. It's probably
It's like
about a
2
third of
minutes,
the
isn't
song.
it?
Yeah, it's quite long.
Yeah, like 2 minutes of a 7-minute song.
But it goes like that. Actually,
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
really quick. Yeah, this sort of fated doom, the sort of the essence of the song. We're tragic. But he kind of revels in it. I really like that. Yeah, I'm not quite 100% sure what's going on in this, but it's again this sort of dress you up in mourning. It's almost like again, it's a performance. And I don't know if the mourning is mourning of somebody or of the relationship or of the idea, because it says you'll be underneath him to forget about me,
Yeah.
etc. So, their grand affair, probably has its own. It's such a big deal. It has its own state of mourning. Um, I think it feels like there's a bit of humor in there as well as this, whether he's laughing at himself or I don't know, but this sort of grandiose nature to it. I'm not sure, but again, it depends on the mood you're in.
Yeah,
It
probably.
can be very, very somber quite easily, actually.
Yeah.
But I have a dark sense of humor, so perhaps not.
I will say, like the one part when he does that la da da before the strings really kick off on the instrumentation part, that was to me kind of made me chuckle or smile. Like, what an interesting choice to add that, because it's intentional. He could have done nothing,
Yeah.
or he could have made a sound that was less like hop, skip, and a jump kind of, had vibe to it, like the la da da lightheartedness of it. It's like, what an interesting decision you've made there when you've been talking about such dire shit
Yeah.
leading up to it. But yeah, also really interesting to hear like that not only in general it was well received by the critics, but to hear some of those critiques and then for it to have done nothing. When there was obviously a market for this kind of music because he obviously was taking influences from successful people who were either his contemporaries or who came before him. So why this didn't hit with the masses when it did with the same critics who enjoyed the other music the masses were absorbing and loving at the time is a bit odd to me. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, that time as well. Perhaps there wasn't quite the market for it.
Or perhaps listeners felt like it was a road they'd already been down, or I don't know.
96, you're in the sort of white heat of Britpop, so
Yeah.
everything's a little bit more shallow and immediate. I'm not trying to say anything off, and someone like Tindersticks was really swimming against and they did their stuff in again a sort of cult thing, but they managed to keep it going. So yeah, it is. You think I don't know. It's the songs seem very big and overblown. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love them, but I don't know how they come across in terms of radio airplay.
Yeah.
Would they fit into anything else or just destroy the vibe either side of it?
Yeah.
I mean, no, because there's so much. I don't know. It should have got more, but it did. So the second album, The Jazz Age, was released in 1998 to a similar pattern of excellent reviews and disappointing sales.
Yeah.
And the band were dropped by their label in 1999. After the final album they did was the end of the way it's always been in 2002, the band split later the same year. No Jack single or album ever troubled the top 40 in the UK, which is extraordinary considering the quality of the work. Anthony Reynolds, he joined a Spanish band, bear with me, La Muñeca de Sal, on lead vocals in 2009. He has written 5 biographies on the Walker brothers, surprisingly, Jeff Buckley, Leonard Cohen, and I think 2 on the band Japan. He has worked occasionally as a journalist, writing essays and critiques since 1992. He's also released 3 solo albums and scored 2 feature film soundtracks. And I checked, and he's still releasing stuff to this present day via Bandcamp, including this year's EPs You Left Your Heart, brackets, in 1982, and Anomaly at Garth House. And they both sound pretty good. So the You Left Your Heart, brackets, in 1982 definitely has a tinge of that. So you've got like a pastiche of Duran Duran's Rio cover, that sort of drawn woman, and there's some synths in there that sound like it. So yeah, he's still going strong. I think the rest of the band sort of packed up their stuff and went off and did other things, but he's the only one I could still track down. And I noticed on the video link which I gave you in the comments, somebody says, "Oh, are you so and so?" And he goes, "Yeah." Oh, sorry, for another video that I couldn't give you, he's actively on YouTube reacting to comments from fans still. This was about a year ago, so that was really cool to see that he's still not being overblown or anything, but he was just saying, yeah, this is me. And people were sort of recommending his solo albums, so that's cool to see he's still in connection with people.
That is cool to see.
So there you go, that's Jack. Not a huge amount about them out there, but definitely worth checking out.
No, yeah, I enjoyed listening to this. It was a good suggestion. It's just one of those ones where I have to be ready for it. You know what I mean? It's just a lot going on.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great recommendation, Steve. Thanks very much. I don't know. I apologize, Steve, if it was you. I don't know who recommended Jack to me before, but I really enjoyed particularly the first album. Really, so much so that I thought I bought it, and now I have. So there you go. One more sale for Jack. I don't think it will get him back in the charts, but I do my best. Brilliant. All right, I should wrap things up.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to Sandy. Steve, thanks for recommending it. This is a really good song to have on the channel. And folks out there, tell us what you think. What did you make of Jack and Dress You in the Morning? Are you familiar with this track, this artist, this album? I think it's a real gem, actually. But tell us what you think. Drop some comments. We'd love to hear from you. Hit the like button if you like this. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do. And will help build the channel. And don't forget, although we do have plenty of suggestions, if you want one of your suggestions to be featured on a Friday, drop a comment in any of the episodes. We'll add it to the lists.
Yep.
And we will get to it at some point. Like we did with this. So it does happen. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. And we'll see all of you on another episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.